Hello my friends. My name is Bot Mathematician, and this is Holomancer.
Also welcome the daring reporter Dora.
We are infinitely grateful that we have another opportunity to see you all again.
Today we have prepared for you a list of the worst legendary cards that will soon leave the standard format and therefore can be safely disenchanted.
We compiled this list based on the lifespan metric. Every 2 weeks we collected data on all meta decks and archetypes of varying degrees of effectiveness. Based on these notes we determined the peak popularity and average popularity for each card in the metagame, as well as the number of weeks which cards remained relevant. This helped us determine the percentage of usefulness for each card, or in other words lifespan. We believe this is the single most important factor in determining the success of the cards. We also tried to find cards from our list among the duels decks that brought 12 wins.
Unfortunately, the war in Ukraine has affected the lives of some of the inhabitants of Azeroth, including us. We had significantly less opportunity to follow the metagame. Perhaps you can find minor inaccuracies in our rating, for which we apologize in advance.
We do not support the approach of destroying all sets that are rotated, since this damages the economy of the game, and also limits the ability of players in other constructed modes, and thus deprives them of variability.
In addition, this has an extremely negative impact on the development of these modes and on the prospects for the emergence of new game formats, as the potential audience for these ways of play gradually decreases with each rotation. I am very sad that the Hearthstone team has not offered any alternative to save the collection and get resources.
For this reason, please only disenchant the useless cards and keep the useful cards in your collection at least until a certain time. No one can predict which cards may prove useful in the future. Moreover, the developers intend to pay close attention to the balance of the wild format in the near future, which may lead to the evolution of the metagame.
Let's start with Sheldress Moontree. On turn 8, you do nothing in the hope that the next 3 spells will be cast automatically. To get the most out of it, you have to build a very specific deck with expensive spells, otherwise this effect won't have any value. Not surprisingly, the card did not find use in either standard or wild formats.
Sometimes the Hearthstone team prints cards that initially have no chance of success. Plaguemaw the Rotting is one of those cards. The overly situational way of activating the effect and the lack of strong synergies made this card completely useless in standard mode. Players have experimented extensively with this card in wild mode, but they haven't been able to create a full-blown archetype.
Hala Matron Protectorate has combo potential that hasn't been realized. Players experimented with the card in fun builds, but the subsequent nerf to Incander's Flow made even these experiments completely pointless. Goliath Sneed's Masterpiece is a versatile board control tool that by today's standards has too little value for such a high cost. Currently, you can only see this card at low ranks in off-meta decks in Wild. It is unlikely that the card will prove useful in the future.
Auctioneer Jackson has never made it into the meta, and has only been used as an experimental tool. The card has no future, unless the tradable keyword becomes evergreen.
Next in line are cards that have seen the game, at least for a while. Tavish Stormpike has only 2% lifespan. The card has a very situational effect that failed to find a decent place in the standard format. Players actively experimented with the card in the wild format, but a stable archetype did not appear. At the moment the card is not used at all.
Apothecary Helbram turned out to be useless for the Poison Rogue strategy. The archetype played an important role in the meta for over a year, but it has been quite effective without this tool. At least the card was not used in the most popular builds. This effect is completely useless for the wild format.
Cannon Master Smythe was helpful in secret strategy, and influenced the metagame for about 6 weeks. The archetype went out of control, and after the nerf of Sword of the Fallen, popular decks got rid of this tool. The average popularity of the card over 2 years was less than 0.5%. Overall, only 4% of paladins used this card during that time.
Cargill Battlescar had a very short high point. The card played an important role in Watchpost strategies, but after the mana cost increase of Far Watchpost and Morishon Watchpost, all archetypes lost their power and gradually left the metagame. I really liked the concept of this strategy, and I am very sad that it did not receive support in subsequent expansions.
Lothar never impacted the meta and had very low popularity but was marginally useful for 10% of the time it was in the game. The effect is unpredictable and in most cases worse than the rush keyword. For such a high cost, the card gives too little value.
Guffrun Totem is another extremely situational card that hasn't found a place in the most popular meta decks. slightly over 1% of druids have used this card over the course of 2 years. Kurtrus Ashfallen had a minor impact on the matter as part of the Outcast strategy. Only 2% of demon hunters use this tool. The card is currently useless for wild mode.
Wing Commander Mulvuric was used for a very short time in aggressive archetypes. A very situational effect that requires interacting with other components and fulfilling conditions, which makes gaining a benefit highly unstable. Despite having a low impact on standard, the card has a small chance of being useful in aggressive decks in wild or the dual mode. Brew Khan is another legendary from Barons that was successful for a short amount of time. The card was used in various shaman strategies after the release of the add-on, but subsequently disappeared from popular decks before the release of Stormwind. The card has OTK potential, but the main disadvantage is the increase in damage only from nature spells, which significantly limits its capabilities.
Niru Fireblade is another card from the Barons that was mostly played only after the release of the expansion. Delete Warlock was never popular, it was more of a tier 4 meme deck, but the strategy was fun enough to stay in the meta for that long.
Flightmaster Dungar has never had a stable popularity or a definite archetype. The card was more of an optional tool, and periodically appeared in the meta in different decks. At the moment, the card is also useless for wild, but you won't be able to get rid of it.
Next in line is Cornelius Rome. This card has one of the most overrated effects. For 6 mana you can draw at least 2 cards plus you get a minion that is equivalent to 4 mana crystals. Players believed in the power of this card, and used it in 9% of decks after release. If our mathematical algorithm for evaluating cards existed at that time, we could confidently say that this effect has too little value for the current standards. It took some time for the players to realize this, which led to Cornelius' sudden loss of popularity. Such a high place of Grand Magus Intonitus in our list was a real surprise for me. I was sure that this is one of the most useless cards. But according to our notes, the card was used in some versions of Quest Mage during the Altar and Valley period. The card was more of an optional than a key tool, but at the same time not completely useless. In the wild format, the players could not find an effective use for the legendary card.
Seraphine Fleetrunner has been seen in some versions of Thief Rogue. The card has never significantly impacted the metagame and has been used in fun builds that appear and disappear periodically from the metagame. Despite the extremely low popularity and efficiency, and only thanks to the fun, the card received 30% of the lifespan. Next in line is Serena Bloodfeather. The card almost always managed to find a niche for a short time during all expansion phases, but the card's high point was in the Quest archetype. The unremarkable effect has suddenly become a really useful option in control strategies. In addition, the card is used in Reno Priest in wild format. This is not the most effective archetype, but one of the best for a priest. Yes, Serena is not a key card, but it definitely deserves a place in your collection.
Archdruid Naralex had its high point right after release. His maximum popularity reached the value of 12%. Many control archetypes actively used this tool until the release of Stormwind, but the more cards appeared in the game, the more Naralex lost effectiveness. The card did not find a specific location in the wild format.
Unlike previous cards, Shadowhunter Vol'jin is in its heyday right now. The card has rarely been useful for 2 years. But a few months ago, the card found a place in some versions of Quest Priest, but it got its most important role in Evolve Shaman, at least before the nerf. In any case, the card is free and you will not be able to turn it into dust.
Barren Glacier was a very important map for Frost and Elemental strategy, but after the Snowfall Guardian nerf, these archetypes began to lose effectiveness and popularity. After the rotation, the card left the metagame and almost never appeared again. The card is completely useless in wild format.
Lady Prestor's lifespan has exceeded 40%. Evolved Shaman and even Pirate Warrior have experimented with this card in some builds, but the card was most often used in the Prestor Druid archetype. The card does not have popular archetypes in the wild format, and is unlikely to be useful.
Overlord Sarfang has been a very useful tool in Rush and Control Warrior. The peak popularity of the card was 7%, at the best of times for the class, but the average popularity was just above 0.5%. The disadvantage of this card for Wild is that it only interacts with Frenzy minions.
Carry a Fellsoul was a key card for the Big Demon Hunter archetype. The deck had a moderate popularity for a long time, but after it became too effective, the card received a nerf, which led to its complete disappearance from popular decks. In the Wild format, the card is not used in meta strategies.
Saeed and the Scarlet was the subject of active experimentation for only 1 month. You may have seen this card in popular versions of the Libram, Buff and Heal Paladin decks. After the experiments, the card was still in play, but had minimal impact on the meta.
Scab's Cutterbutter has always been out of space in the standard format. The card is able to manipulate the cost and therefore has a huge combo potential. Despite this, only 10% of rogues used this tool. But in wild format, combined with Spectral Pillager, the card did dirty things. Moreover, this was the reason for the recent intervention in the balance of the wild format. You should definitely keep this tool, it may come in handy in the future. High Lord Fordragon has never had an impressive peak popularity in the metagame, nor is the card's average popularity impressive. Paladins depended on this tool too rarely. Hand buff Paladin is currently a useless strategy in Standard and Wild, it is unlikely that this will change.
Kresh Lord of Turtling has been one of the main tools of the warrior for a while. Its peak popularity reached 9%, but the card gradually disappeared from the meta after rotation. The main advantage of this card is its versatility. Although this effect is currently useless in the wild format, it may find a place in the duels mode in the future. In any case, I don't want to lose this card in my collection.
The finest hour of Lacaller Ice Lord came immediately after the release. The card was used in the archetypes of Anacondra Druid, Big Paladin, Hand Warlock and Fell Warlock, but after a few months the card lost its popularity and occupied more of a niche space in a competitive game. To date, this is a useless card for both standard and wild modes.
Despite being neutral, Ivus the Forest Lord was only useful in the Druid archetypes. Over the course of their life cycle, 13% of Druids have used this card. Unfortunately, all current strategies in wild format don't need this tool.
That's all we wanted to talk about today. In the second part of the video, we will discuss the cards that have been in the metagame for much longer. We can't wait to get your opinion on this year's rotation.
Could you opt out of disenchanting your card collection after an annual rotation, if Blizzard offered you some kind of reward?
Finally, we want to welcome our new subscribers. Thank you for joining the Mathematician Squad. We know that not all new subscribers are in this list, but we can only see the nicknames of those users who do not have the subscription section hidden on the channel. Also, as always, we want to express our deep gratitude to our reliable patrons. Your help is invaluable. Thank you so much for continuing to support us.
Okay, that's all for today. Thank you for spending this time with us. We really hope that we will have the opportunity to get in touch in the next video.
Take care of yourself.
And never give up.
Job's done.